Hello, my name is Merlin, and welcome to Get Started. So in this first special, we are going to be covering one of my favourite aspects of the hobby, converting and kit bashing. So what we're going to do is turn our Terminator Captain into a Blood Angel Terminator Captain, and we're going to be using a classic model as a bit of a reference guide. So this is going to be a bit of an in-depth conversion, so you don't have to follow along if you don't want to. There will be easier ones when we add the Infernus Marines in Mission 3. We'll also be using a few advanced tools, so we'll be using clippers and a hobby knife. So you might require adult supervision, as these can be quite dangerous tools to use. We'll also be using plastic glue and super glue, so make sure you are working in a well ventilated area, as these can get quite noxious. I myself am actually slightly allergic to super glue, so I will require a mask. Right, if you've grabbed your tools and you're ready, I'll meet you at the table and we can get started on our conversion. So before we get started, we'll go over the tools we'll be using. So first off, we've got a pair of modelling clippers. We'll need these for cutting off certain components as well as removing components from frame. So just be careful, these are sharp, and when using them, make sure you keep your fingers well clear at the pinching end and just squeeze the handles to use. We'll also be using a hobby knife / scalpel. And again, these will be quite sharp implements, so make sure you are seeking adult supervision if you are under 18. And make sure you're always cutting away from yourself when possible. You might also require a file just to help smooth out certain components. So I've got a sort of a small hobby file here that's ideal for the job. And finally, we're going to need glue. So we're actually going to be requiring two types of glue. As we're going to be using some jewellery chain, we'll need some super glue to attach this. So I just got Loctite here, precision stuff. I do prefer the liquid over the gel, as it seems to have a better hold to it. The gel, I always end up sort of fighting with it to try and get it to work. But yeah, super glue liquid is the best. And we also have here, Contact a Professional, a poly cement. So this is a proper plastic glue. Yeah, just be careful. You want to work in well ventilated areas when using any type of glue. Yeah, this is the one I like to use. It's a really good glue, gives you a nice strong bond. Right, now that's the tools out of the way, we'll go over the components we're going to be needing. So, of course, we're going to need our Terminator Captain. As you notice, mine is missing his head. That's because the peg snapped off during deconstruction when I cleaned him up back along. But that's fine, we do need him in separate components, as we're going to be doing quite a lot of modification to this model. We've also got my reference model. This is the classic Blood Angel Captain Carlane. So as you can see, he has a Thunderhammer raised up, a Storm Bolter, and he has quite a lot of chain detail, which is what we're going to try and replicate on our new Terminator Captain. If you don't have the actual model, there's plenty of pictures online. We also have a bag of components, so I've got various torsos and shoulder pads with bits that I want to clip off. I've also got some fine jewellery chain, some Terminator honours, plenty of extra purity seals, the head from Carlane. There is an alternate head you can use on the Terminator frame that if you don't have this one. Speaking of the Terminators, we have the Blood Angel Assault Terminator kit here, where we're going to be needing several components from. We'll clip those out and I'll show you just in a bit. And in case I want any other Blood Angel details, like extra blood drop icons, I have my classic Firstborn Death Company frame here, which I've been using to make Death Company intercessors. So the components on the Terminator sprue we'll be needing is part 14, this Thunder Hammer. We'll need part 65, this Iron Halo. We'll need part 60, this Tilt Shield. We'll also need this shoulder pad here, as well as any of these Terminatus symbol shoulder pads. This one matches the classic Carlane look, so we'll go for part 37. If you haven't got Carlane's actual head, you'll want part 48, which is the Sergeant head here with the bionic eye. From the Death Company sprue, we'll want this torso, as it's got some lovely blood drop icons that we can clip off. There are also some shoulder pads on there that have the symbols as well. So the first thing we want to do is to disassemble our Terminator Captain. So we'll start by removing him from the base, and we can actually set this aside. I've already glued mine down, so if you haven't done this, you can do that yourself. Next, we'll remove the two arms from the pegs and the shoulder pads from the arms. We'll keep these as we do need to cut off these small components later. And again, we'll set the arms off to the side. Next, making sure you have a firm hold of both legs, we can pull the back torso off, and we have our two legs. We'll split those up like so, and we're ready to begin. So our first stage, we're going to be focusing on the cape and the rear torso. So there's quite a few details we're going to add here. First off, we're going to need some fine jewellery chain. So I've got some just here. It's about 2 millimeters in diameter, and I've got about 10 centimeters or so total length. That's about all we'll need for this conversion. So if we turn the torso over and we bring in our reference model, what we can see is it goes from one shoulder down in a V sort of shape and back up to the other shoulder. While this has two pieces of chain, we'll just do the largest set at the bottom here. So we'll bring in our super glue first, and what we want to do is put a little bit of glue just there on that clasp where the cape meets the armor. Bit too much, but that'll do. Then we want to take one end and dangle it in the glue. Then we'll leave that for a few minutes to dry. Once that's dry, we'll put another bit of glue in the same location on the opposite side. And following the V that we have here in the cape, we'll glue in like so. What we'll also do is put a little dot of glue just on the bottom here. And then we'll leave that to dry, and we can cut off any excess. So with that dry, we can start adding on extra details. So I've got a couple of Terminator honours here from plenty of vintage Space Marine kits. And we're going to want one of these blood drop icons. So we'll gently cut it away from the torso, like so. And then we're ready to attach it to our model. So we can use plastic glue for this. What we want to do is try and replicate the chain detail here. So we'll put one Terminator honor about here, another one here, and then the blood drop symbol just up there. So we'll put 3 dots of plastic glue, one there, and one just up around there. Then we can attach our honor markings. So one just there. One there. And need a little bit of coaxing to get it in the right place. And one just there. So we'll leave those to dry, and then we can go on to our next detail. So while those are drying, we can actually move to the next step, which is to clip off these posts. So that's simple. All we do is bring in our clippers, line up the flat side of the armor, and clip away, like so. Then we can bring in our hobby knife and gently work away any leftover bit and file it flat, like so. And we'll do the same on this side. Ready to attach the arms later. So next up, we need to remove the iron halo. So we need to make sure we remove the bottom piece there as well. So we'll bring in our clippers once again, putting them underneath the iron halo and gently clipping it away. And then bring our knife back in again, trim down any excess and smooth it flat. So we're left with something like this. Next we'll bring in the Terminator frame, and we need to cut out our chosen iron halo. So what we'll do, we'll cut the smaller tabs off first, and then cut the main one. Then we'll clean this up, and you may need to smooth flat the bottom, but I think it should be okay. It'll fit over our torso just fine. Before we glue it on, we'll just test fit it, making sure we've got the angle right. And yeah, that will go on lovely. So now we can bring in our plastic glue. We'll put a small dot where the original halo was. And then we can place this in its place. Just making sure we got it center. And there we go, perfect. Now that's done, we can leave this to one side to let it fully dry, and we can start work on the next step. So for stage 2, we're going to start work on the front torso, the shin guards and the head. So we'll start with the left half of the torso, and as you can see, I've removed the shin guard. So the first job to do is to remove this purity seal. So making sure we don't clip too much of the actual guard away. We'll go from an angle like so. And we can bring in our hobby knife to remove the rest, in a combination of cutting and scraping motions. There we go, nice and smooth. Next up, we need to attach 2 new purity seals in a similar positioning to our original reference model. So we want one that's right up on the knee and one just below it. So the purity seals I've chosen are 2 from the Space Marine Intercessors. Pretty relaxed downward facing ones. So we're going to put 2 dots of glue, 1 right up on the knee and 1 just below it. Then we can add our first purity seal, like so. And then the second one below that, like so. There, and we'll leave those to dry. With those purity seals drying, we can now move on to the next step. So I've sourced 2 more of these little blood drop icons from part 8 on the Dev Company sprue. I'm going to put a dot of glue in each corner of his shin, and we can attach one of these on either side. That's about right. And with that, the shin guard is complete. We can leave that to one side. And now we'll look at the left half of the torso. So if you haven't already, remove the post in the back of the head, so there's nothing remaining. And next we're going to bring in the head. So whichever one you've got, whether it's the one from the Terminator kit or the actual Carlane head itself, we need to remove the ball joint from the base in order to get this guy to fit flush. So first we'll remove the tab with our clippers. Then we'll gently start removing part of this ball joint, making sure we don't cut the chin off. Then we can bring in our knife just to help smooth out the base. Then before we glue, we'll make sure it fits. And yeah, that'll fit quite nicely. We'll double check it by bringing in the front torso. And yes, that's going to fit quite nicely. We'll have them looking off to one side like the original model was. So now we know that fits, we can bring in our glue. Putting a dot just in the well there, then bring the head back in. And we'll leave it to dry. So with the head drying, we can move our attention to the front torso. So the first task is actually going to be the trickiest and is fully optional. What we're going to do is we're going to remove the skull from the chest eagle and replace it with another blood drop icon. So we're going to be using our hobby knife for this. Our first job is to remove the iron halo, which will be quite simple. We just have to bring a knife in and trim it away. And then we can smooth the area. Then using our knife, we'll carve down the sides of the skull, separating it from the wings. And then we just need to get the knife in behind the skull, carefully removing it, trying not to damage the Aquila wings. So with that cleaned up, we're ready to bring our glue back in. Running it into the center there. And we can take our blood drop icon and drop it into place, trying to get it as center as possible. There. So now left with something that looks like that. So next we're going to need some chain again, and this time we're going to focus on the front torso. So if we bring in the Carlane model for reference, we have one piece that goes from the top down to just below the Aquila and then back up to the opposite corner. And we've got a second piece that goes from the top down to the opposite corner. There's even a purity seal in there as well to sort of hide any fixing, which would be ideal. And we've got some Terminator honours dangling down here. We can just glue these onto the torso and that will look quite nice, I think. So we'll start up here just by the Aquila. So just a small dab of glue, and we'll dangle the corner of the chain in place. We then want a dab of glue just on the bottom there, so that we can curve back up into this corner here. We'll let that dry and cut away any excess, and then we'll put the second piece on. Then for the second piece, we need to start in the same place, so another dab of glue just on the top corner here. Dangle the chain in place. And then straight across the torso to the bottom corner here. And we'll leave that dry, and then we'll clip away the excess, and we'll be pretty much finished. And finally, we'll put a little bit of plastic glue just there, and we'll place in a purity seal just to add a little bit of extra detail. With that, our front torso is done. You can of course add some optional Terminator honours. I might add one just on there, the Aquila, just to hide some damage from the clipping earlier. There we go. A little busy, but I think it really adds to the character. Now we can move on to the next stage. So we're nearing the end now, and it's time to focus on the arms. We'll start with the left arm, as that needs pretty much the most work. We've got to do a few bits of clipping and filing. So first off, we've got these raised nubs, which will be in the way of the shoulder pad we're going to add later. So bringing our clippers, clipping them away, and then I recommend using the file here so we can file the area smooth. Like so. Next, we're going to need to remove this bit of the tactical rail, as we need to attach a scope. So remove as much as we can with our clippers. If we're bringing our knife, we'll cut straight down so we can have a stopping point, and then we can remove the rest of the rail. Finding the area flat with our knife. Like so. So he has a scope on the original model, and the one I've chosen is this one. It's not too big, but not too small either. It's one of the scopes that comes from the Intercessor's kit. And as you see, we have a little bit of the actual gun there. What we need to do is remove as much of it as we can. So we'll start by cutting underneath, like so. So we're left with this small domed piece. We can then slowly cut away as much as possible before we bring in our file to do the rest of the work. Then we'll dry fit it. Yeah, that's going to be perfect. Then we'll bring in our glue, put a small dot there, and we can attach the gun in place, the scope in place. There we go. Next up, we'll clip out our required shoulder pad, so part 37 here. Simply clip it away from the frame, then we can clean it up with our hobby knife, just removing those last little bits of nubs. And then we'll dry fit it on the shoulder pad joint, and yeah, that'll look fantastic. So bring in our glue, run it around the edge, and glue it in place. Finally, we'll bring in the original shoulder pad, and we need to clip away this bit. So it's going to be quite simple. All we do is get our knife and cut away from the shoulder pad and the purity seal before we bring in our clippers to remove the rest of the purity seal. And that can glue in place in its original position. And then we can position the shoulder pad like so. We'll set that aside to let it fully dry, and we'll work on the right arm. So this is simple. All we're going to do is cut out part 14. So making sure clip all the nubs away. Then we can clean it up. Then we'll bring back in our rear torso and we'll dry fit this in place, making sure it fits. And yeah, that's going to look good. We can even have it raised if we wanted to. In fact, yeah, that actually looks quite better than down at the side. So yeah, glue it in however you wish. We'll also want part 39, this rather decorative shoulder pad, which is the sergeant's, but I think it's fitting for a captain. So I'll cut that out, clean off any nubs. And we'll dry fit it. Yep, that's going to fit fantastic. But first, we need to cut down this bit. So remove this nub with our hobby knife, gently cutting through it. Then we'll file the area flat, as we need to do the same thing as before. We need to liberate our shoulder pad, our elbow guard from the shoulder pad. This one's going to be a little more in depth as we need to cut away quite a bit of the shoulder pad. So what we'll do, we'll start by cutting this corner away. That gives us a bit better area to work with. And we can bring in our knife and we'll gently clip away using a combination of sawing motions until we liberate it. I had to do that off camera as it was really quite fiddly, but we're left with that. And then we'll put a drop of glue on the corner there, and I filed away the little nub. You can just about see where it was left, and we'll place that there. We'll leave that to dry before we attach the shoulder pad, as we may need to clip down some detail to fit it flush. But that's just a dry fit. Yeah, we might have to just cut that little corner off, but other than that, it will look fine. Now that all our components are dry, we can start doing our final assembly. So we'll start by gluing the two halves of the torso together. So I'm going to run a little bit of glue around the hood and then also around this central piece here and down along his hip. We can then take our rear torso and glue it in place. Then we can glue our shin guards in place. Just put a little bit of glue on top here. And we can push them in place like so. And we'll just dry fit the torso to make sure everything fits snugly. And we got a little bit of that purity seal in the way there. So what we'll do, bring in our knife and we'll just clip it out so it sits flush. We'll re-dry fit. And yep, that will fit perfectly. So now we can glue rear torso in place. Like so. And now for the final components. So we will bring in his arm. Normally the arm is down at the side, but I think it'd look better if we have it raised up and firing. So what we're going to do is raise the arm up a little bit like that. So we'll put a bit of glue on the arm connector. And then affix that in place. Leave it a while to dry. Yeah, that's going to look really cool. And now we'll dry fit the right arm. So we either have it raised like that, or down and out like that, whichever you prefer. I think we'll go with the raised. That looks a lot more heroic. So bring our glue in, apply a circle just to the inside of the shoulder pad there, and then we'll position it in place like so. Then we can test fit our shoulder pad, which will fit perfectly, no adjustments required. So a bit of glue just there. Yeah, we'll leave that to fully dry before we push him down to his base. So before we push him to the base, the final detail to do is to glue in the tilt shield. So the closest match we got to his original tilt shield is this one with a blood drop and a bit of scroll work. We're going to need super glue because we're going to glue it right on top of the chain where the shoulder meets the arm. So a little bit glue just there, and then we'll rest it in place. With the tilt shield in place, we can glue it down to his base, but to make painting easy, we're going to leave him separate for the moment. But what we'll do, we will dry fit him just to see what our completed work will look like, and that is pretty heroic. So we'll want something to hold on to him when we're painting. So what we'll do, we'll make a hole in a spare base. I've got a 25mm one here. So we'll need a hobby drill, and we'll drill just about there. Then we'll need to use our knife, and we need to make the hole wider. So we'll put the tip in like so, and then gently twist the blade, widening the hole as we go. Then we will dry fit, see if it's the right size. No, needs to go a little bit further. So, in other words, we need to get the knife in a little deeper. So, there, that looks about right. Bit tight. Couple more spins. Yeah, that'll do fine. So what we'll do is we'll get a dot of super glue just on the front toes there, so he temporarily holds in place. And then we've got something that the paint handle can hold on to while we paint him. There we go. With that all done, our conversion is complete and we can move on to painting him. There you go, one converted Blood Angels Captain Carlayan ready to take to the battlefield. Up next we'll add some colours to our model, so whether you follow this guide or not, the next video will be very helpful to you as we look at painting Blood Angels up to a battle ready standard. I hope you've enjoyed this extra special episode of Get Started. Conversions needn't be this difficult. They can be simple as adding a shoulder pad to a model. For that, we have another special coming up for conversions, which will require the Blood Angels Primaris upgrade kit, as we're going to convert our Infernus Sergeant into a Blood Angel. As I said, next we'll turn to painting our Blood Angels, so I hope you join me for that episode. In preparation, grab yourself a can of Sanguine Red from Colourforge and prime your model. That's the colour I'll be using, as it's a really good match for Mephiston Red from Citadel. That's it for this episode, so until next time on Get Started, thank you all very much for watching, stay safe and happy hobbying. Goodbye.